I have a double mission today with you. The first is to present very briefly, that's what I've been asked, to present briefly this book that I just published 2 years ago, Confronting the Machine, so it's not so recent anymore, but because of the topic, this is what I've been asked. But the second, and I think most interesting thing, is that I will present the exhibition Entangled Realities that we just opened at the House of Electronic Arts in Basel. So just very quickly, I will discuss a bit the book that I published by the writer, Confronting the Machine. And the main topic, I was very struggling with the idea of artificial intelligence and generative art and computer art. And I tried to go through the history of computer and generative art to try to see what was going on with the approach and how the approach changed from the early days of the 60s, 70s to the days, especially in the 90s, when media art started to become really a very discussed topic and started to be crystallized in a kind of a sort of a movement with net art and media art. And so my main question was, what's happening today and what brought us to this situation in which lots of artists, many artists and extremely interesting artists working today in media art seems to favor a disruptive kind of approach. And here is an example, for example, by thisnovation.org, who are artists from France, who explicitly states in their mission that they are a working group aiming to disrupt, pervert, complexify the discourses on technological innovation. So my question is, what happened? Why did it come to that? And how do we try to understand this approach that seems to favor a subversive approach to computer, to the use of computer and to technology from art? And by analyzing, I'm going to go through very quickly through this because this is a presentation that should last maybe half an hour or 40 minutes, so I'm just going to give you the key information. By analyzing several events during the 70s and writings by philosophers, theoreticians, and curators, I try to answer a couple of questions related to the what are the models today? What were the models of presenting media art and computer art? How can we approach computer art today? How are artists contributed to the debate concerning the imagining of our future society? So by going through the history of computer art and especially analyzing some of the seminal works that have been done with the use of computer. For example, this is a robotic installation that I think all of you know by Edward Ignatowicz, the Scenster, who was created for the Evolution Exhibition Center in Eindhoven. It was presented between 1970 and 1974. This is a picture that I took 5-6 years ago where only the body part was still existing. And now, just really a couple of days ago in Poland at the Raw Festival, a team from Poland brought it back again to life. So this was a seminal work of art in the use of computer to create a mobile robotic cybernetic sculpture interacting with the audience. I was very curious to know what was the purpose of the artist, Edward Ignatowicz, and I went through all this writing, some of the articles that he published. And he was really obsessed by the idea of creating a moving sculpture that was lifelike, that had the illusion of being alive. And it was working, of course, with computers to be able to use the Doppler radar and microphones on its head, so that the sculpture or the head of the sculpture could move, reacting to the noise and the movement of the audience. And another example, of course, is Harold Cohen, one of the first artists that really developed his own language, programming language, Aaron, by using Lisp. mainly, and he created a program that would autonomously generate pictures and drawings. So those are very famous examples, and I was really interested to see what are the relation to the scientific research, artificial intelligence at that time. What was the goal that the artist had in relation to the research? Harold Cohen was also collaborating with a researcher from the artificial intelligence, but he was always stating that he doesn't want to be associated neither to computer art nor to artificial intelligence. What he was trying to do was really to understand the functioning of creating a drawing. What happens when somebody creates a drawing? What happens when somebody puts some marks on a piece of paper? What happens when these marks on a piece of paper becomes a recognizable object? So it was really an epistemological research on the act of drawing for Harold Cohen. And for Edward Inatovich, in my opinion, he was also very obsessed with this idea of creating a sculpture that is resembling to a living creature. And this is also the reason why he was very fascinated by industrial design, because for him industrial design was an example of an exercise of producing forms that follows a function. And as an artist, he was convinced that it is important to have a function while creating a sculpture. Many art historians, researchers, they spoke about the use of computer, the thematized artificial intelligence. There are, of course, many researchers that were very critical about artificial intelligence. Some of them, for example, I'm losing my notes, but I'm going to get back to them. There they are. Herbert Marcuse, one of the first, mentioned that the industrial society, which makes technology and science its own, is organized for the ever more effective domination of man and nature, for the ever more effective utilization of its resources. Many researchers, many philosophers that approach the topic of artificial intelligence pointed out that this is a tool for capitalism, this is a tool for the army industry. Richard Barbrook, for example, strongly criticized the artificial intelligence research, and many others. What I want to say by this is that this kind of approach, this kind of criticism has somehow influenced very much the artistic production as well. And it seems to me that when we arrive to, those are just a couple of examples of works using generative arts. This is also shown, this is a research that is also shown here, Carl Sims, Evolved Virtual Creatures, Simon Penny in Robotics, Mignonneau and Sommerer, Evolve. But when we arrive to a moment like the Documenta 10 in 97 in Kassel, we have a first exhibition of media art in a very important, context, the context of Documenta. And I was interested to see at that time what were the curatorial choices that were made in presenting media art. And Simon Lamunière was the curator together with Catherine David. But Simon Lamunière was responsible of this media showroom in Documenta 10. And his choices were clearly about using computer. He was interested to find artists that would use computers to push the machine. I'm quoting in one of his emails that he was exchanging with the artist, pushing the machine and its computer powers to the limits, to turn them to other ends by perverting them, or to take over the machine. Those were the criteria, the selection criteria that made his curatorial choices in selecting the artists for this showroom. And Jody, who is a group of artists that were really among the first also to use internet, and to create works that only exist on the net. You all know Jody probably. Were also among the artists presented in this showroom. So I'm probably mixing a lot of things together. I'm going a bit fast, but in my research, basically, I try also to analyze how computer art during the years have been defended and have been proposed by curators, by theorists, and by art historians. And many theorists that wrote books and articles on computer art, and I'm quoting, for example, Stephen Wilson, Edward Schenken, and so on. They came with there is a narrative that is very present, which is to say that computer art is there to bridge the gap between the humanities and the science. And of course, since the 50s, with this famous speech that has been given by Charles Snow, this idea that the humanities and the science are separated is very present. And this is a narrative that is very often involved when defending computer art. Very often one relates to the famous Two Cultures talk by Snow, and saying, well, computer art is here to finally bridge the gap between the humanities and the science. We need computer art, we need media art to unite again these two worlds. And I think it's not a wrong idea. I think it's a very interesting point. But I think this is a quite reductive way of approaching computer and media art in general. It forces the artistic production and an educational role within the society that it's not necessarily the one that artists want to embrace. And what I was trying to present in my book is that very often artists refuse to take this role. They have to be considered individually. This is some example of these more recent kind of works that have been presented, like, for example, the Eva and Franco Mattes, My Generation and Destroyed Computers. This you probably know, Jaromil, Folk Bombshell. This was actually on the wall of a quite interesting exhibition at Transmediale. So it was considered a work of art on its own, but it's actually a code that if you run it on a MS-DOS system, it makes your computer turn in circle. It kind of makes it dysfunctional. And so on. This is an example of also interesting artificial intelligence or a speculation about a possible artificial intelligence by Spela Petric and Mia Tarsic. So this idea, in my opinion, that computer art bridges the gaps between the humanities and the science is a very recurring idea that I kind of try to dismantle a bit in this book by providing some information about how computer art has been presented and has been done by artists from the 70s up to the 90s, and stressing the fact that, in my opinion, this idea reiterates an unnecessary stereotype that art is emotional, while science is objective and unemotional. And I think there are a lot of different ways to create works that could embrace other attitude that instead of these stereotypes. There are many other ways, keys that has been used to read media art during the years. Some have stressed the fact that computer art necessitates a dedicated aesthetics. Some say that computer and media art are simply tools for artists, and some say that computer art is separated from the traditional field of art. So this was one of the most debated discussion. It was brought by Claire Bishop in one of her articles called The Digital Divide. And I tried also to analyze why is it that there seems to be a divide? Who is pretending that there is a divide between media art and traditional art? And I also, in this book, I also analyzed several arguments concerning this alleged digital divide between the media arts and the traditional art fields. All right, so I'm not gonna go too much into the details in all these topics. What I wanted to say concerning this voyage that I done by analyzing the works from the 70s to the 90s is that I think it would be very problematic to force a work of art, whether it's computer art or art with artificial intelligence, into just one narrative. I think every work of art needs to be approached with a very individual and specific way. There's not one way of doing computer art, there's not one way of approaching the topic of artificial intelligence. I think personally that the disruptive kind of approach that we have been accustomed to in recent years, in many places, in many festivals, in many media institutions in which we sort of are forced to have a kind of conflictual relationship to technology. We are fascinated, we use technology, but we are also always in this kind of situation where we have to look critically to technology. I think of course, it's a very important thing to do, but my question is how do we get out of here, right? How do we start to embrace technology again in a positive way? How can we, again, as artists, also contribute in a constructive way to a dialogue with the technology? So I'm going to stop here, this first presentation on confronting the machine. It was probably a bit chaotic, but I think what I want to show you today is mainly the exhibition Entangled Reality, which is just an exhibition that we just opened 1 week ago at HEC. And this is for me also an example maybe to connect to the previous question, showing some of the artists that, in my opinion, also managed to engage with the topic of artificial intelligence, sometimes in a critical way, but also, interestingly, in a positive way as well. So, Entangled Realities is the title of this exhibition that we just opened with 13 artists. On the topic of artificial intelligence, Entangled, of course, relates to quantum physics. This spooky action at a distance, when two bodies seems to have similar properties and communicate at a distance. So Entangled Realities for us, for me and Sabine Himmelsbach, who is the director of HEC, and we co-curated the exhibition together. Entangled Realities means the fact that we seem to be in a dialogue with the machines, especially nowadays that machine learning as a specific case of artificial intelligence has become so successful and so implemented in the society. Today we have a dialogue that is reciprocal, right? We influence, we train the algorithms, we train the machines, but they are also somehow giving back to us not only beautiful pictures or video games or whatever, they are really embedded in the society, and we are also conditioned by the machine. So it was very interesting for us to see, to present an exhibition of artists that engage in this dialogue and show how we are entangled today, we and the machines that we use. Just a brief note on HEC. HEC is a Haus der elektronischen Künste in Basel. It was founded in 2011. Since 2014, it's here in this beautiful building. We are, of course, presenting an exhibition, visual art exhibition, also dance pieces with virtual reality, concerts, and of course also workshops, so and conferences. So we are really trying to present not only visual arts, but also embrace a variety of artistic production. Now, Entangled Realities, this is the exhibition that I would like to talk to you today. This is the entrance of the exhibition with a beautiful work by Mario Klingemann that you recognize maybe already. And Entangled Realities is also an exhibition that we did in collaboration with some artists, architect and artist, Fabric CH. We asked them to develop a program. This is something that they have been doing, and they developed a program for us as well, which is an artificial intelligence program. It's not machine learning, it's a more traditional top-down optimizing software for finding sets of solutions given different parameters. So basically we gave them different parameters, for example the numbers of walls, the numbers of the surface available, the numbers of works the numbers of light spots that we have at disposal in the exhibition space, and then also parameters related to each single work. If it needs light, if it needs obscurity, if it is loud or not, if it has to be visible from the front or from 360 degrees. And so the program started to analyze all this data and created a simulation of exhibition space with our plan. And this is one example of the exhibition that you see. And this is the noise production within the space. And this is a close-up of the exhibition. So, and in the exhibition space, as you see, we also have the program which is currently running and keeps formulating new exhibition possibilities. And this is a view of the exhibition. You can see there are some walls that are white, some walls that are black. Some of them are disposed in an apparently random way, but this setup has been more or less calculated by the artificial intelligence program. Of course, we didn't leave completely free choice to the machine. We also had our own curatorial choices. But then we were somehow influenced, and we decided to implement some of the choices, especially when considering the scenography of the show, to the algorithm. Now to the work themselves, we have several artists that thematize the topic of artificial intelligence here, Zach Blas and Jemima Wyman. You know probably this work. I'm here to learn. So basically, they brought to life again a chatbot, Tai, who was developed by Microsoft in 2016. And the chatbot became racist after just a couple of hours of dialoguing with the audience, online. So it's interesting to see how this relationship, how an artificial intelligence can be, of course, manipulated and can evolve in an unpredictable way. And this is a quite ironic work where the chatbot is brought to life again and it speaks about and reflects about its own existence. And this is a work by James Bridle, who is very famous. I think today you all know the book that he published, New Dark Age, which is very influential. And here he has built his own algorithms to create a self-driving car. And he then took pictures of all the different matrix of, this is a machine learning program, of course, where there are different matrix of different understanding of the world. Through the camera. So it wants to show how basically algorithms see the world and puts emphasis on different layers of the reality that we see that are of course not the same as us. So it tries to also bring the topic of the fact that algorithms have another perception of reality than what we have, and he visualizes this fact. This is a beautiful work, Membrane, by Ursula Dahm, a German artist who created this work, a new version. It's an interactive work with different cameras. And the user, as you can see here on the picture, has also an interface where it can manipulate some of the parameters. So there is machine learning algorithms, generative adversarial networks, of course, that is involved in the process, and the user can manipulate. It's not completely direct. It's quite difficult. It's not like a game that one can understand exactly what to do because there are so many processes involved. But there is parameters such as the time of memory, how many frames are taken by the algorithm in the creation of the new videos, because basically the adversarial network creates new videos from what it sees. Huh? So it's a way also to allow the user not only to see what machine learning is producing, but also to try to enter into a dialogue and see, by tweaking a bit the parameters, what can be affected and how can it be somehow manipulated. This is a work by Dries de Porter, Surveillance Paparazzi, which is a camera, actually not a camera, but a box with a display, two displays on each side, actually. And Dries, he didn't hack Camera worldwide, but he just simply accessed open cameras, so video cameras, surveillance camera that he found around the globe, and they were open access, so he could simply use them, connect to them, and then he developed a system that is trained to recognize celebrities, and whenever this camera that Dries connected to recognize a celebrity, then it takes a picture of it, and then it goes into a database of celebrity picture. Of course, you can see on the top right the screen showing one of the celebrity, probably a football player, and that is recognized in one of these cameras. Of course, it's not the same person. Probably the camera never saw the real person, but it recognized the facial features of the celebrity, and so it takes a picture of it. Here we have a work by Anna Dumitriu and Alex May, which is a robotic sculpture. The robotic sculpture is underwater, and there is sort of tails that spins, and it also gathers data, such as temperature of the water, the positioning of the sculpture, and the idea is to create a robot. For the artist was to create a robot that potentially in the future could embody humans, you know, of the singularity. When one day we will be finally able to download our own consciousness into a machine, then we would need another body. And so this idea is to create a body that could survive extreme temperatures. And this is why it's called archaea bot, because archaea are these organisms that can survive very hot temperatures. And so for the artist, it's an idea to merge the question of posthumanism, singularity, with the problem of global warming, of course. So what do we do in the future when we have a situation where we, with our own body, cannot survive anymore? So this is a kind of a speculative work, of course, in this sense. And here, I think it's a beautiful work by Holly Herndon and Matt Dryhurst, who are mainly musicians, and they have been training their own artificial intelligence, their own algorithms, they call them Spawn, to create music. And since a couple of years, they have been training these algorithms with their own voices to produce music. And they made a performance in Berlin last year, where they decided to bring the algorithm to the public and to show to let the algorithm be trained also by a greater public, so to bring them to a bigger audience. And here what we show is actually documentation of this performance. I think this work, it's beautiful because as we see in the work by Zach Blas and Jemima Wyman before, for example, we saw a bot that has been trained by racist people and became racist itself. And here we have an algorithm that is brought to be trained to other people, by other people, and especially in the audience. But among the chorus singer, we have also, for example, transgender person, we have men, woman, person of colors, and so on. And the idea of the artist was to say, we have to take care of these algorithms. We bring to life an algorithm. It's our responsibility to take care that it is being it learns from a diversity of culture and ideas. And so this is, I think, it's a kind of a optimistic, a kind of a constructive work involving artificial intelligence. Mario Klingemann using generative adversarial networks. Probably you know this work. I know that I have only a couple of minutes left. Lauren McCarthy, she did a very interesting performance. You can see here in the exhibition space, we had a bed and some furniture. So Lauren installed several cameras, microphones, and devices that she could activate from online, from abroad. And so she basically personate an artificial system, a smart home artificial system. So the people that enters the exhibition space in a specific moment when Lauren is online, they can ask, for example, Lauren to turn on the light, turn off the light, turn on music, and so on, or boil some tea. And I think it's an interesting way to engage with artificial intelligence and smart home systems that are becoming more and more present today, like, for example, Alexa or OK Google and so on, because we use them without really thinking about privacy and sharing our personal life. But when we know that the artificial system is actually a real person, and we engage with this artificial system in a way that we would engage the same way the smart home application, then we realize the intimacy and realize how we, of course, are sharing so much of our personal life. And this is Trevor Paglan, Behold These Glorious Times, a beautiful video that show thousands of images and videos that are used to train the algorithms to recognize objects, for examples. And I think it's just a very interesting way how we managed to create with a simple video kind of uneasiness about the amount of images that are used to train the algorithms. And Anna Riedler and David Pfau, they have created these tulips that are actually generated by, again, neural networks, and that they have trained with their own images, actually, and they put on the market, on a blockchain market. So they links also neural networks and artificial intelligence with the possibility of a blockchain market, and this is a quite complex work. Segmentation network by Sebastian Schmick, showing how also algorithms are trained to recognize objects in complex context. And finally, the last work, a mirror that is trained by hashtags in Instagram, like imaginary or one of them, and analyzes your face to give you a judgment that is, of course, something quite metaphoric, quite symbolic, not really realistic, but quite poetic nonetheless. All right, this is, in short, the exhibition. Of course, you're very welcome to come and visit it. It's going to stay on until 11th of August. Thank you very much.
So, thanks, Boris. Maybe there are some questions for the audience. Yep.
Thank you for your talk, and I think I will need to take a train soon to Basel. I was super interested about your concept that you give some part of your curatorial ideas, the decision-making, to an algorithm, and I was just wondering if you could empathize it with one or two more sentences. I was wondering if it would be like a stochastic system or a real trained algorithm, maybe on a sort of data set and so on.
It's basically an optimization system. So it's basically an optimization system. As I said, it's really a top-down. It's a program that the artists have created themselves. And it simply tries to optimize all the data together. It optimizes the best solution. For example, when they say, okay, I have 13 works, I have to put those ones that are noisy together in isolated, so I have X numbers of meters of wall to separate them. So it's an optimization system. But it's very interesting because what it's interesting about it is that at the beginning we were talking with the artists to do this system, and we were really thinking if something good come out, we are going to use it. And then we were running a bit out of time. The artists needed a bit more time to finish the program, and so we decided to do our own setup, our own curatorial choices, and nonetheless to have the program shown on display on the exhibition, what we did. But then we finally saw the results, and we were quite bluffed. We were quite surprised to see the beauty also of we found some glitches in the way they constructed the walls, the algorithm constructed the walls. It was not so logical, actually. Well, it was in a way, but not in a human way. And we were really also aesthetically impressed and pleased by this solution, and we decided to change it to implement this solution. And we thought that the solution proposed by the computer was even more, I would say, daring in aesthetic terms than what we would have done. And so this was for us a very nice surprise, actually.
Some other question?
Thank you for the talk, and you referred to the critical and positive approach to technology, and after that we started to look through all these mostly critical artworks which are part of the exhibition in Basel. So it would be nice if you could elaborate on that. So, like, how a positive approach to technology from a curatorial perspective is to be found in the exhibition.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you very much. I have to say that myself, this is a big question that I've been asking also with my colleagues and artists. I think we do not need only positive or only critical. My statement was not to say we have to move over, we have to change. I was only somehow recognizing that we are living really in times where also for artists and curators it's almost impossible to do an exhibition by saying, hey, this is super fantastic, artificial intelligence is beautiful. There is really a constant way of, and it's also likely so because we need critical views. So in this exhibition there is a lot of works that are very critical, and they show also some fallacies, the bias of the algorithms, for example. But I believe there are 3, 4, 5 works that are also positive about algorithms, and that was for us very important, not to have yet again an exhibition that is only negative and only critical about technology, but also that shows some ways also to engage in another way. And the work by Holly Herndon and Matt Dryars, for example, I think is very optimistic. The work by Anna Dumitriou, the Archaea bot, is very visionary, of course, about a post-human existence in a robot. And the work by Jenna Sutela, Memo Atken also contributed to this work, Nimiseti, which is a poetic production. It's very an uncanny work where you see, it's very complex to describe, but basically she trained an algorithm with a voice that she read from an author from the 19th century that allegedly was a medium in contact with Martian language. And at the same time, she had bacteria being shown to the artificial intelligence. So the artificial intelligence basically connected the language with the movement of bacteria to create its own language, which is a fictional language. And that created also a landscape. And I think that's a way of, I don't think it would be fair to read it through a political or sociological approach. I think it's a very creative, poetic way to engage with algorithms. And I think that's very important as well.
Okay, no more questions? Public. Then thank you a lot again.
So much.